Hey everyone, welcome to Straight Up Startups. Today is Tuesday, July 19th, and it is 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here where we're at. Today we got 8 topics to talk about, but to start off, I want to introduce my friend as always, Nick Hughes. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Connor?
I'm doing very, very well. Where are you calling from?
I am in downtown Seattle at WeWork.
WeWork, sweet. Shout out to those guys. They've been very nice to us lately, letting us host the
Oh
shows.
yeah.
Cool. Well, Nick, before we start talking about the topics, I know you kind of had a big event last week called the Live and Up Festival. How'd it go?
Yeah, it went well. It was fun. We had quite a bit of activity on the platform. We had four live streamed conversations, basically, spanning the list of, going from just straight up talking about entrepreneurship to podcasting to marketing and branding, and just had a great conversation. A lot of great content came out of it. If you go to founderslive.com, you're going to start seeing a lot of those little nuggets posted pretty much every day.
Excellent. Yeah, I definitely was tuning in. I know it's helping me with the project and a lot of good content up there. I think people are going to
Yeah.
really like seeing some of those conversations. Something that I really picked up a lot from it that a lot of people seem to keep bringing up was talking to consumers. I think that's a big thing that goes understated a lot in startups, in getting out there. If you have any amount of users, whether it's one or a million, that you need to talk to those people. You need to reach out to them. You need to interview them, kind of do like a focus group type thing so you can really understand what they are. A lot of times you get lost in your own product, right? You think you know it so well, and usually you know it so well. You know the problem that you want to solve so well that you actually get lost in your direction and where you're going, and you forget to have that empathy for where the customer is. So very important. I think 3 of the 4 people that you interviewed all brought up that same point.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, I'm guilty of it as well, right? Because it's so easy. It's just being lazy. You're like, nah, I'll stay in the office. We'll hack on this thing, and it's absolutely hard actually to get out of the door and actually put your heart out and possibly get a total no or a no, we don't have that problem or we don't give a shit about it. So,
Hmm.
but you got to do it because that's the how you learn about what your end consumers actually value, so then you can build a valuable product around that.
Yep, exactly, exactly, and that's the most important. And the users are the most important opinion out there, so you got to take those things seriously.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let's start off with our topics today, and I'll lead the way here on the first one. The first story, I know we didn't have an event last week because of the Liven Up Festival, but this comes from about 2 weeks ago. It was Etsy. Etsy had a really big problem, and the article that we shared was from TechCrunch. But specifically, they had a third-party payment processor it's called WorldPay, that pretty much crashed, and it was delaying all the different payments coming through, and all these people were sending support tickets, and then it got even worse a week later when what they think is Etsy went in and manually pushed through all the payments. And then when they got the automation back up, it actually processed the payments again. So people were getting $1,000 charges twice, and that's just destructive for the normal consumer who a lot of times only has $1,000 in their bank account.
Right.
So there's overages. So then you get the banks involved, right? So you're talking to your bank for some other problem, and you got all these different issues going on. But Nick, what's kind of your opinion of that? Are you a user of Etsy at all, or what are your opinions in general about
Right.
who are the winners, who are the losers here?
Yeah, I am not a user of Etsy. Actually, I have not purchased anything on the platform up to this point. But, just from my experiences back in the day with payments, I know that this can be, it's difficult sometimes. It's incredibly frustrating. Basically, Etsy, it wasn't their fault, from my understanding. They literally, this third-party payment platform, it was their issue, but yet Etsy's sitting there holding, they're looking like the one that screwed up, or they're dealing with the bad press. And I think in the end, I mean, I don't know necessarily if this is possible, but that is something that cannot and should not happen, right? Like, so you either have a backup, essentially maybe a kind of plan B for processing, that you can throw a switch in code and basically start plugging in the back end payments, but that shit should not happen, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably what they're saying. I mean, Etsy's a public company, and so that's my stance. Is like, man, that is a huge hit on revenue and just brand in general, right?
And I don't think it was publicized as much for how big of a deal I thought it was. And I know it didn't affect every single consumer or seller on the platform. It was only the ones who had the WorldPay integration to take payments. But that payment was just a straight debit card and credit card processing that was very direct. So that's why so many people used it. What I gotta say is the winner on this whole thing was definitely not the consumers, definitely not sellers, and not Etsy or WorldPay, but PayPal. Because PayPal through this whole time was still having their transactions go through and not having an issue. So we had a group of users who were having a significant problem using the platform and selling their goods, but the PayPal clients were not having any issues. And PayPal obviously kind of is the third-party intermediary. Everything goes through their accounts and their separate payment system. So it's not as direct as some of these other credit transaction companies. But I think they're a huge winner. I'm sure they got a lot of turnover from people jumping off WorldPay and getting on to PayPal just so they can get these transactions covered.
Oh yeah, I fully agree, and I do think that Etsy, this is going to be a scar, right? And they're definitely going to deal with this for a while. So anyone out there that's building any sort of app that has any sort of payments in there, you need to double and triple check, and then have maybe a plan B, plan C, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, but moving on to the next topic here, big news. Couple months, or actually a couple weeks ago, Microsoft acquired LinkedIn for literally $26 billion. I mean, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
And that begs the question, what is the worth of your professional network? And then also maybe a follow-on, what's the future of our professional network given this transaction?
So we've all been suckers in this, right? We've all got some spam, phone call, spam, email. I think we're all very aware, especially at least the people within the tech industry, that our information is not private and it is sold all over the place. I've gotten spam phone calls for people saying I won the lottery. It actually happened to me about 2 weeks ago. And when I was doing research on it, I found out that these scam phone callers will call you, and if you're the sucker, they'll actually put your information on another list and sell it to other people, and it's like known as the suckers list.
Hey,
right? Like, oh, you can call these people.
Was this the New York online thing?
No, some guy called me. The phone number was from Jamaica, and he said he was with some lottery, the Mega Millions lottery. And where I was confused is back. Remember when the lottery a couple months ago was at like $1 billion?
Yeah.
And everyone was buying tickets. And speaking of that, I think someone in California just claimed that winnings this week, right? 6 months later.
Yeah.
But he said he was from Mega Millions, and I won like $7.5 million. And he was trying to sucker me in to go buy some Gold Eagle stamp and send him some money. Some accountant was coming through. But I digress. The point to this topic is that our information gets sold the second you sign up. You just kind of assume that stuff's not going to stay safe and secure. All the big companies are being attacked, being hacked. I mean, Sony is the one that everyone really knows about, and all that credit card information, email list got out. So it's really interesting to see when people put a numeric value on our information, and that's kind of what they're saying. This article that we shared was that it was $26 billion, and they have 433 million members, right? So that puts us at like $60 per person, which to me just seems like nothing. That's not that much money, but if that $60 were paid out to all of us because it's our information that's getting sold, that's a significant amount of money to distribute across 433 million. And so I just found it very interesting on that's what the value is, right? To buy it. And buy that much information with those active users. And then I'm just interested to see what Microsoft and LinkedIn decide to do with this merger. A lot of things are going around and just kind of how they're going to work out. But what do you think?
I mean, my biggest question is, it's not as much security or like data, kind of what you mentioned. So I agree with that. But I think my biggest question is, what is the future of LinkedIn in terms of innovation. I have a hard time believing that anything's going to be built totally new, given that they're going to spend 2-3 years integrating into Office and even probably connecting Skype in some way, shape, or form. And it's just a lot of integration work is going to happen. I don't think a lot of innovation is going to happen around it. And actually makes me feel good around Founders Live, because we're creating a social platform for entrepreneurs or professionals. And I think that there's an opportunity to really be creative in how we do that. And I'm not really fearful of LinkedIn, because I think that they're just going to be distracted. Microsoft's going to be distracted on that. But in terms of value, I said this from the beginning. I always thought that LinkedIn was quite valuable in terms of the fact that you're having a network of professionals, which from an economic standpoint is quite a bit more valuable than consumers or teams or any sort of thing like that. So I think the value or the worth is quite high. Clearly, $26 billion proves that. But I am not sure what the value is going forward, given that it's in the hands of Microsoft.
Yeah, I totally understand. And I think that it is a perfect match because of the connection, like you said, and the demographic that's on LinkedIn. Because it's specifically for the professional networks, that kind of already makes it its own niche, right? And these are certain type of customer that are a lot different from kind of the general population on Facebook, which just covers everyone and it's not as specific. And so for Microsoft to make that acquisition, I think makes a lot of sense, because that is their target demographic on almost all of their products except maybe Xbox. All the Office products, right? That's going to be great to market all those products there. And then all of the Azure web services, they got to go against Amazon now, which is just killing it with AWS. And so I think it's a really good opportunity for them just to stay front and center on all those different professional products and to kind of keep within that network. But Microsoft has not done well when it comes to the social network stuff. They kind of try to do the Google Plus thing, which we also said didn't work very well. I know I think they bought Yammer when Yammer was kind of one of those unicorn businesses back in the day. But yeah, they really need to make that consumer play. And along with the stores and everything, they've been trying to do it, but they just haven't. I just don't think they've made that connection just yet.
Well, hey, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. But going on to the next topic here, there was just a big article that came out. I believe the source is from GeekWire, and it's regarding transportation. And I wanted to know, Nick, just about your interest in what kind of transportation apps that you primarily use, to kind of give a little rundown. It's a guy, his name was Miguel Felipe, and he was living here in Seattle, and he was working with the tech community, and he ended up moving to London to join Citymapper, and living here in Seattle was what really inspired him to get involved with the transportation industry. And so they're launching Citymapper here in Seattle. And I know that One Bus Away is really big here. And I mean, obviously there's Waze, there's Google, there's Uber, there's Lyft. What different things do you use and why?
Yeah, I use primarily One Bus Away if we're talking transportation. I think it's gotten progressively, incredibly better over the last couple of years. It's very smooth, very great for any sort of bus and knowledge and information. I use, I actually, as I was reading this article, I just thought the way that Citymapper is actually coming together in terms of their value, I think Google Maps is even getting close to everything that they're doing. So I use Google Maps, like when you just search your location, you hit a button from your you basically go directions from your location, and it gives you a number of different options to look at, and that's fairly real-time data in terms of if traffic is a little heavier. So I would say that those two are my big apps that I use for location, and I don't see a value actually for Citymapper, and I'm very impressed with Waze. I just don't use it because I don't drive around very much. So.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, I've been a big fan for One Bus Away. For the last 3 years, I have used the bus almost completely. relied on the bus. I still own a car, but I don't really drive it at all anymore. And I'm just kind of sitting on it as an asset because it's a truck and it helps me in rare occasions. But one bus away, I hear problems about it, and every now and then there's like that ghost bus, and I've definitely experienced that. But I think it's pretty straightforward. Where the difficulty comes in is you really need to know some of the for sure information. You need to know the bus number, and you need to know the location on where those bus stops are at, and those things are kind of disconnected. And I think Google has improved a lot with this, with some of the different moves that they made, but I always struggle to find bus information through Google Maps. And so kind of where I've put it is like Waze is great for the car, because it's got all that traffic data, and I've used one bus away for all the bus routes. But I would Google, when I first was trying to learn all the bus routes, I would Google it and it would tell me a bus line, and then I'd go to one bus away to find out the times because I thought one bus away was more reliable. The other reason why I've been more pro one bus away is because it was made at University of Washington.
Yeah.
So it's like a local, a bunch of college students made this app for the city and partnered with the city to make it. And I think that's just a really cool story, to see that and still see that the app is still supported through that network.
Oh yeah, I actually I know one of the original developers. He wasn't like a co-founder, but he was part of the dev team that built the first app, the very first One Bus Away app. His name's Paul. He's a great entrepreneur and technical co-founder here in Seattle. And we always kind of gave him crap. Just made, like it's a popular app here in Seattle, and it was fun to joke around with him about it. But I think you should be proud that it's and actually, just to take a small tangent, we have about 45 seconds on this topic, but I think they should be proud because it's probably one of the most purposeful apps, right?
Yeah.
And when you build an app, you really need to look at, okay, what's the value proposition? Why is someone going to use this? And man, that's why One Bus Away is probably the most used app on my phone, is because like people need this information. It's very purposeful, and that's why they've been successful. And I think if you polled a lot of people here in Seattle, they would say the same thing. They're like, man, I use that all the time. It's great. So I give them a lot of congratulations for sure.
Yeah, if any of those guys happen to catch this, the new update that came out recently is amazing. They redid all the UI. It's a lot smoother. They don't try to grab your location right away. You have to put the location in there, but it's made it a lot smoother. The new interface has a great kind of with the swipe screen that you swipe up. I've really liked the new interface. But Citymapper, I think, has a lot of potential because it shows all of the different tools, right? Here's Uber and the cost and the time. Here's what taking a bike is, and if they partner with Pronto Cycles, I think that would be super cool to see that. And then walking, and then the bus. I think it's a very good opportunity. And when we get the light rail and everything going, it's going to be kind of an interesting tool to really say what's the best tool for me.
Hey, but speaking of location and mobile and a phone right in your face, holy crap! This Pokemon thing is Pokemon Go is just taking over the world. And I think everyone has a opinion on this now, good or bad. What's yours, and what do you think about the app?
Well, yeah, I mean, you were talking about One Bus Away, and your most used apps is definitely the most used app on my phone right now. I can't believe how little I've used Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all the other social networks that have been on for our phones for the last couple of years. I haven't been using them at all because I'm much more interested in Pokemon and kind of playing that game. And I've probably spent too many hours. Actually, tonight I'm taking a trip out to Bellevue to meet some friends for dinner, and I'm definitely going to stop at Bellevue Park to check out the mayhem that goes on there because I just can't pass up that opportunity.
That's crazy.
But I think it's awesome, and I grew up with Pokemon. I mean, I was right in the heart of Pokemon. I remember being in like first, second, third, fourth grade, and Pokemon was the coolest thing that was out there. From playing on Game Boy, when Game Boy Color came out and Pokemon was there, and they had the red and blue and then future yellow versions, it was the coolest thing that was out there. And then the card game, which was more of a collector thing. I didn't really like play it, but everyone wanted to collect it. And what they did with the cards that made those successful is they made them like holograms, right? So there was the normal cards, and then the collector's edition ones was like, oh, you got the holographic Charizard, and you became the coolest guy in class for the day. And so I've always been impressed with how much Pokemon has evolved and how it's still relevant and still big. I have a 14-year-old brother who loves Pokemon. So this game has so much nostalgia. Last Sunday, I was down in South Lake Union at the Center for Wooden Boats. There was well over 100 people there at 10:30 at night playing Pokemon. Everyone's sitting there, never seen anything like this. I think it's a complete game changer. Nothing has ever gotten people out like this. And the communities are so friendly. There's so many people talking and hanging out, going out to these cool places. And I just really am excited to see how they evolve it. And, 1 weekend, and they have 24 million people on at one time on a Saturday. And it's absolutely crazy.
Oh, I mean, look, I'm not a player, so I haven't downloaded it and I haven't played it. So there's the disclaimer. But as I'm interested in all tech, I'm very familiar with the game. I know how it works. And for me, I'm conflicted because I think, I'm always very cautious of anything that spikes this quickly. There's going to be a drop. I mean, it's like you look at the Ice Bucket Challenge, you look at all this other stuff that like hit mass media and just mass adoption so quickly. There's going to be a slowdown. People are just going to get kind of bored, or at least like once it's not new anymore. But I also have been observing, so I agree with you that it's great. Like this is the first AR, augmented reality, merging the mobile with location with some app that actually merges with the real world, and that's amazing, and it is bringing people together. But my concern is just this, and I'm seeing so many people. Like, I have never been more zombied out. Like, I've never looked at more people and said, God damn, we are zombies now than what's happening in the last couple of weeks. And that's my fear, is that it's starting to create something that's a little weird, and people bump into you because they're looking at their phone. And this is way worse than it was a few weeks, months, and years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's my concern, man. But the last part of my answer will say that these guys figured it out, and anyone building a mobile, specifically mobile, but any sort of app, you also want to take a look at just the breakdown of maybe what they've done, and there's game mechanics here that are just, I mean, people are addicted like I've never seen before. So that's the lesson you take from this.
Yeah, certainly, and I'm sure the whole AR landscape is going crazy at this point, right? I bet there's investors all over trying to write checks for anything they can to get in on this industry and kind of this boom. The thing about Pokemon is that it is so ingrained culturally into a specific demographic. But I was at the park last weekend, and there was a 6-year-old playing, there was a 16-year-old playing, there was me, a 26-year-old playing, and there was a guy who was 56-year-old playing, and we were all sitting in the same circle, all talking with each other and talking about the game. And I've never seen anything other than maybe sports bring kind of that group together. And so I thought that was cool. But the Pokemon here are really what I think is drawing so many people. I think it's going to be really hard for an augmented reality that's going to be about going to local places and taking pictures and getting people there, because the Pokemon are really what made this uber successful. These were games before and different products before, and they all came together. And when they put the Pokemon license in here, that's where it got all the traction. And so I'm still interested. Is anyone going to be able to get anywhere close to getting people to go out and do things at specific locations?
I'm not. I have doubts as well, for sure. But moving on, so next topic, which is basically, we're going to call this the $1 Billion Boys Club. And every year, Allen & Co. is an event that is an invite-only event up in Idaho at Sun Valley. And, Connor, you actually put this topic on the page. There was an article from Recode, and it just was like all these pictures of, all the media moguls and the $1 Billion Boys Club, CEOs, and What do you think about? Do you think this smells of elitism and behind the scenes deal making, or is this actually like something to celebrate?
I don't know if it's something necessarily to celebrate, and I'm not that surprised by it, right? To me, it's a little fishy because it sounds like secret society, but it is out in the open. But I wanted to review some of the names here because it is crazy, right? Apple's Tim Cook, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, right? That's the start. We got, I'll come back to him, Bob Iger, who runs Disney. I know Kaz Harari, CEO of Sony. Mary Barr, CEO of GM,
Yep.
Nirav Talia, CEO of Nextdoor, Brian Roberts, who runs Comcast, John Skipper of ESPN, and a bunch more. Jack Dorsey, and it's just crazy, right? It's this meeting of the minds, and there's this funny joke by Kevin Hart, who always talks about staying in your financial lane, right? And he talks about, as a celebrity, he has a certain amount of money, and he goes out with these athletes who have a lot more money, right? And he can't even compete with these guys. And so it's not a surprise that all these uber rich CEO types all are coming together to kind of brainstorm and talk and get all the ideas out there and talk about these first world problems, these 1%er problems that I'm sure they all encounter. And so I just thought it was really cool that they all come together and probably stay at some crazy resort and do all that. And I hope that good things are talked about here and settled, and not big political agendas that are taken care of. But the one guy that I wanted to point out that I really liked in this article, his name is Vivi Nevo, and if you haven't heard of him, you definitely should look him up because he's like this mystery entrepreneur that everyone talks about. But right now he's the major owner of Time Warner, right? And I think he's an Israeli born. He came up on a little bit of money that he inherited and just turned it into this huge amount of wealth. But he's not like this big shiny entrepreneur like the rest of these names are. He's a kind of the backdoor guy, but all these people know him, and he's kind of a big influencer. And so it was interesting to see his name so high on the list because I didn't know who he was. I knew who everyone else was. But then it was like, oh, but this is the guy that is in all the deals and knows all the big guys, but no one's talking with him.
Wow. Yeah, I saw his name come across. I will definitely dive deeper because I'm always interested in these type of people for sure. But yeah, look, I think what came to mind was, okay, that's a basically a summer boys club for the tech elite, the very, very wealthy. Well, why don't we create something for, maybe it's Founders Live specific, so anyone that's a member can then actually, it might be a physical event. We meet up for a weekend. We talk about more of a celebration and a collection of leaders that way. Maybe we do that. But I think what this does is, look, this has been happening for I think they've been doing this for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
So this is not new, but let's maybe think about how to have our own, as opposed to just looking at them being like, man, am I jealous or do I care?
Yeah.
So maybe we can do our own. But moving on. All right, so this is interesting. Anyone, especially in the U.S., there might not be a lot of people that know about Line, which is a messaging app. It's a chat app. It's very popular in Asia, specifically Japan and other countries over there. They just IPO'd, $1.2 billion raised at, I'm not even sure, but I think it's $10-20 billion valuation, might even be larger. It's the IPO not enough people are talking about. Why would that be?
So I first learned about Line back right around Halloween last year when I traveled to Thailand. I actually went to a wedding, and the bride was working for the company, and so I got to meet some of her colleagues and some of her bosses that were there, and that's when we learned about Line and said, hey, this is how everyone talks to each other here. Like, we don't use text messages, we don't do email, like everyone gets online. And I thought that was kind of weird, but as I was traveling around for the 2 weeks that I was there, I saw it absolutely everywhere. It was the primary thing on every single person's phone. You're riding the train, that's where people are communicating, and that's where I was like, whoa, this is a lot bigger than I thought it was. And that's something that my girlfriend and I still use it. We talk to people that we met there, and we kind of talk to each other using it as well. It's a cool little app, but what's really impressive is how they've scaled kind of outside and created this family of apps. And Facebook is the closest thing that we have in the US that is kind of creating this family of apps they've unbundled. But Line, I think, has really paved the way on how to do that. I think they've had it's like 18 apps with 10 million plus downloads, right? That's just a crazy number to constantly be hitting, $1 million download or million plus downloads is really impressive. Their daily active users is really, really impressive as well. It's like 72% or something like that come every day, use it every day, which is really impressive for any app. And at 218 million users, that's a lot of people that are using it. The biggest hurdle right now is that they're really big in Southeast Asia. They're big in Japan, Thailand, but they're really stuck in this bubble. And are they going to be able to expand and get out of it and kind of have this worldwide customer, especially because they're going against Facebook? And Facebook, I think Line is kind of the biggest competitor to Facebook because of the grip they have on Southeast Asia, which is a big tech hub. It's very tech-centric part of the world. And so how are they going to go in? They have more users already on Facebook in these places, but so many people use Line as their default messaging app. How are they going to be able to compete?
Yeah.
I think they might be the only one that can.
It's a good question, right? And, you think about, Facebook is the big, very, very large 800-pound gorilla in the world in this area, but what they less have a footprint in Asia, China specifically, but even Japan now, in all these other countries, you're looking at a lot more popular apps. And I think in the end, there won't just be one, right? So I think Line is positioned to be the Facebook of that area of the world. And interestingly enough, I think that they're showing more innovative activity. They're showing more integration with commerce. You look at Messenger or Facebook in general, we're now, it's like 12 years, 13 years past Facebook being founded, and they still really haven't cracked commerce. They've actually innovated or helped with, somehow brought some unique advertising to mobile and Facebook in general, but man, they haven't cracked local, they haven't cracked commerce, and I think Line has done a way better job of integrating with everyday life, not just social on a mobile or a desktop. So, it's an interesting point, right? And I'm curious will Facebook actually do that? And so I think Line, if you look at the future growth of the two companies, I would put my money on Line because I think that they're going to continue to grow and actually either take market share from Facebook. But again, going back to the relevance and valuable, like in terms of users, like Line's figured out how to make themselves relevant to users in their daily life in the world. Not so much an augmented reality aspect, but really like, all the other apps you were mentioning, and then we're talking about like delivery, travel, like takeout for food, like all this stuff. There's all these different aspects on that. So we'll see if Facebook can get there, right?
Yeah, a big point that I want to share is I know the whole sticker thing is pretty common now in messaging app. I know Facebook Messenger is pretty big, but Line was the first one to do it. Line was the first one. They actually create strategic partnerships with brands and companies to have specific stickers that they can put into the app. That's where a majority of the revenue has come from. But they did $1 billion in sales in 2015, right? Facebook's not doing that, only with advertising, and Line hasn't even jumped into that advertising platform as much. They've actually been making products, making partnerships with brands and companies, and actually created like a true company based off it. Yeah. So that's kind of why I think that hopefully they have this outlook and are able to approach it from a certain direction.
Nice.
But for our next topic, it's actually not based off an article. It's more, it's coming from a topic from Founders Live, specifically your network, Nick. And it has to deal with the dreaded email introduction, which we've all done. We've all done the cold call and the email, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So Nick, the question is it possible to botch an email intro? And what do you do to bail yourself out if you do?
Yeah, good question. Since I posed it, right? No, this is an interesting topic because I've noticed that, I'm making more email intros, and that's great. People request that if I know someone, could they get connected, and so that's great. But yes, I think it is possible to botch them, not only from me creating the intro for two people, so me being the introducer, but so real quick, I'll touch on that. You want to make sure that it's double opt. So let's say Joe wants to meet Mary. You got to ask Joe why to get the story, understand why, what's the reason. Sometimes you might just make that decision of, hey, it's probably not the right ask. So you can kind of squash it right there. If it sounds good, you go ask. You actually should clear it with Mary first, just so she is understanding the nature of what's going on and not just getting some random email intro. That's the worst, right? When you get this email in their box, you're like, what's going on? Like, I don't even know what the context is. They might not even explain very well in the introduction. So you want to double opt in, and then you send that email, and you want to make it clear what's the value that each person. You want to make it clear the ask, and then in the end, you just want to make it clear that, look, I'll let you two follow up. You can remove me, just so there's not this. We've also probably had those email intros where there's 20 different responses and you're still attached. And so it's just more and more in your email box, right? So, and I think on the other side, just responding to, when you get an email intro, when you respond, you move that person to BCC, the one that introduced you, so they're falling off. They know you responded, but then they fall off the trail, and you can continue the conversation, and just those sort of things. But yes, it's definitely possible, and I think it's important for everyone to learn the etiquette, so that they don't make themselves look like an idiot.
Yeah, I think that etiquette's really important, and that actually might be a really good piece of content for you to put up on Founders Live. Kind of like, I'm not sure if you've created a step-by-step etiquette guidelines, but I think that's an interesting piece of information to put out there, because I'm sure it is mistaken a lot, and it's putting your reputation on the line too. Right? Because especially if it's introductions from founders to investors, that's a very iffy line. I'm glad you made the point that you want to get the double verification from both sides and say, hey, I'm going to make this introduction, check it out, make sure that you respond and you take care of it in a timely manner. Because if you can very quickly ruin a relationship with you and an investor or you and a founder by just throwing it out there. And you're going to lose that trust, because I think it's a long run play to have that etiquette, because you want to have that trust, especially if it's going to an investor, that when they get the email from you for an introduction, it's worth their time to look at, right? If you're just spamming them or blindly sending them the introduction, then they're going to start creating that opinion about you, and they're not going to start looking at it. So you really want to be tactile on making those decisions and sending those off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so we have one more topic here, and this comes from a Medium post from an entrepreneur a founder, he chose to shut down his company based on certain experience and metrics and whatnot. So, question is, when do you know it's time to shut down your startup that you've been so passionately working on?
Yeah, so I think we talked maybe 2 months ago about the first half of this article. And it was about the whole process that he was going through, and he thought, the company was going great, or the founder said, I really love working here, but we're going to shut it down. And I'm really glad the founder's name, his name's Alex Fishman. I highly suggest going and checking out this article, because either now or at some point, if you're in this position, it opened up my eyes. I haven't had that experience where I've had all these employees that had to let go, and we had severance and stock and insurance and all of that. So I'm not too familiar with it, but to see how much goes into making that decision and closing everything down, from going through all the different services that you have, whether it's Gmail and Basecamp and Highrise and CRMs and Slack and all these different tools that are services that you're paying for, right? You got to make sure you go through every little detail of those. But then there's all the documentation. This guy, he has a list. It's like, make sure you have your Red Bulls. The day before you lay everyone off is going to be the longest day of your entire career, just doing all the prep. And then that day that you make the decision is going to to be the most emotional day because every single person is going to react differently. You need to be extremely empathetic towards their situation. But the part that resonated the most that Alex was talking about was I was really happy to see how much he brought up, like thanking that employee, right? Because you're the CEO, like you're also losing your job. But as the founder kind of and the CEO and the leader, your last thing that you need to do is try to comfort these people as much as possible and make sure you thank them for the hard work they put in and tell them that it wasn't their fault. That the team was great. It just didn't work out and we didn't do what we thought this could do. But, kind of giving them a positive spin and saying like, hey, I'm going to help you out. I'll give you LinkedIn recommendations and just thank you in general. I thought that was a great way to kind of sum up his whole process.
Yeah. Look, this is a very, very difficult decision. It's a painful decision. I also would suggest that if you're a founder, you should enter into this experience knowing that most likely, at least more than 50% chance you're going to be doing this at some point. And it is what it is, right? Startups and companies are temporal and sometimes they just don't work. Maybe the market changed, the world changed, execution was not correct, whatever it is, right? And so, I think you just covered a lot of the what to do. When I look at this, just saying like, when do you know it's time? I think it's time when, I think to say it differently, when your company's taking off because it's crazy. There's just user growth, there's interest, there's customers are paying for it. If you don't feel that pull of momentum, you're now in a place of stagnant situation in your company and possibly, you are failing. It doesn't mean that you will always be failing, but right at that moment, you're not growing. And if that length of time is too long, it's time to pull the plug. And I don't know what the exact amount of time is for people, but I would say between 6 months and a year, you will know, like once you hit that, oh shit, like where are we and what's going on period of the company, within, I would say 6 months on the short end, a year, it's time to shut it down. And I think it's better to shut it down personally and realize your next move and increase your chance of success in the next thing than spend 5 years scraping your face on the ground only to then somehow actually shut it down at that point. Why didn't you shut it down 4 years ago and take those next 4 years and go do something else or join another company? So, I think when you know, and a lot of founders are just lying to themselves, and it's simply when there is no momentum and interest and you're forcing everything, that's when you know it's time to move on.
Yeah, and it's been a crazy time. The entrepreneurship is bigger than it's ever been. There's so much motivation and not necessarily incentive, but willingness and openness for people to go try to start their own companies and launch these, and everyone fails, right? It's a very, very low margin of success. You have to define success in your own way and learn from those experiences and move on. But yeah, making that decision, it's the sunk cost fallacy where you put all this time in, but you really got to evaluate what's best for you and your company and your employees and make that decision when the time is right. So more people don't get negatively affected by it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's it for the show today. Thanks a lot, Nick. As we sign out here, you got anything to contribute, say, whether it's tech or non-tech related?
Hey, I just want to thank our sponsor on Founders Live, Finanza. They do a lot of great work in the accounting, CFO, bookkeeping direction. They're not your typical firm though, so you definitely want to check them out. Actually, the URL would be idealcpa.com, and they're great. And we've recently brought them on as a sponsor, and really excited about the service they provide. And actually, you will start seeing more education information around finances, accounting, and the stuff that we as founders need to think about as we grow our business. So look forward to that, and we just want to thank them.
Excellent. Thank you, Bonanza. I noticed it looks like you got a Supersonic shirt yesterday, 10-year anniversary of Seattle losing the Supersonics to OKC. I can
Oh,
definitely tell you not a lot of people here feel very bad about Kevin Durant leaving. We know the feeling. It happened to us, and so the Sonics will live forever in our hearts.
oh, that's why I got this bad boy.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day, Nick.
See you, Connor. Peace.